This is History of Sexuality in the U.S., Lecture 4E, Part 3, talking about a straight state. And this is in part inspired by the title of Margot Canada's great History of the 20th Century United States, The Straight State. Here we're focused on the late 80s and the 1990s. One key thing that kicks this off is the 1986 Supreme Court decision Bowers v. Hardwick. In this, the Supreme Court rules that right to privacy they've carved out within marriage and then for all heterosexuals does not apply to gay sex. They uphold Georgia's anti-sodomy law that was used to put Clayton Hardwick in jail for performing oral sex on his boyfriend. This decision is one of the major motivations for the formation of ACT UP and for more radical AIDS activism that sees that disconnect between the way that the federal government is treating gay and straight citizens. A different sort of space opens up when we look at the Tailhook and Aberdeen scandals. And they're called scandals, but what we want to understand is that these aren't conventional sex scandals where there's a scandalous relationship between two consenting partners. Rather, these are military sexual abuse scandals. Tailhook was a convention in Las Vegas where a group of naval airmen assaulted a number of people during the conference. And Aberdeen is a proving grounds, an Army training facility in Maryland where a number of the drill sergeants and other trainers were sexually abusing female recruits. These scandals came out into the public eye and revealed that there was an enormous amount of sexual violence happening within the military as it continued to increase the amount of women who were participating and integrated into those forces in order to meet their needs of an all-volunteer military. This didn't just happen with military officers and drill sergeants. Rather, it reached up to the highest levels of power. And we saw in the 1990s sexual harassment scandals around abuse of power by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, as well as by President Bill Clinton. Both of these were important national discussions in that to discuss what happened in either the case of Thomas or Clinton required pushing the boundaries for acceptable discussion about sex and sexuality in public. So for many newspapers and news reporters, the first time they were able to talk about oral sex was when the president received it from an intern, and then it became a national political scandal. At the same time that we could see that there is an enormous amount of sexual misconduct in the military and in the government set itself as some kind of hypocritical moral example by passing and putting into place the don't ask, don't tell policy. This was a response to calls to rescind the military's ban on gay and lesbian service members, but it actually increased the military's ability to identify and discharge people on the basis of their identity. It made it under this don't ask, don't tell policy that simply saying I am gay or I am bisexual was grounds to be separated and removed from the military. And so this policy, which came into force in 1993 and would stay in force until the 2000s, is one that's going to mean that more people are discharged from the US military for their sexuality in the late 90s than in the late 80s. And it also means that many of the people who are getting away with sexual abuse might have been kicked out of the military had their sexuality been different. In 1996, two important pieces of federal legislation that tell us a lot about the straight state were passed. The Defense of Marriage Act, which created a national definition of marriage, one man and one woman. It's another one of these policies, like don't ask, don't tell, or like the ban on HIV positive people entering this country that was in force from 1987 to 2010, that we're going to see crumble. It's a really kind of brittle approach. It's a response to change that's happening, and the state doubles down on heterosexuality and heteronormativity, but it can't hold the line. In the case of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reform Act, we see a number of anti-black and anti-woman changes made to welfare policies in an attempt, again, to enshrine a narrow version of the heteronormative family as the only acceptable unit of social organization. Last but not least, all of this that's happening within the US is also happening within a context where the United States is committed to interventions abroad based on the idea that US intervention is going to prevent sexual violence and be a cure for the kinds of sexual misconduct that are obviously happening at every level of the government. So in 1998, when the United States attacked Serbia in what's called the Kosovo War, supposedly the United States intervenes to prevent these brutalities that Serbian soldiers are committing upon people in Kosovo. But instead what we see is at least one of the US soldiers who deployed in Kosovo committed an act of sexual violence and murdered a Kosovar child and then attempted to cover it up with the help of other soldiers. What we can see is that the United States has not proven itself capable of regulating sexuality in a way that is equitable or just, but increasingly at this time positions itself as the sole arbiter of acceptable sexuality on a global scale.